And I think people forget too how sexually corrupt like the Roman Empire
Oh,
was. Weren't they super like? Weren't they all about homosexuality? Like, wasn't that like a super common thing among the Romans?
yeah. So this is where it gets fuzzy,
Okay. Yeah.
because even the term homosexuality is a modern term. Like, they didn't use that
Okay.
term back then.
Okay.
Of course, people like to flip that argument around and things like that. But and it depends on different parts of the empire and things like that. Um, but yes, the Greco-Roman world uh, was very sexually deviant.
Yeah.
I'll use that word. But let's tie it into this. Let me tie it back into the gods, like the
Mm-hmm.
repaganism stuff for a second. I'll tie it into the fertility gods of the land of Canaan. The fertility gods in the land of Canaan that Israel went into. This is why God's like, don't worship any other gods. Don't bow down to them. Baal, Asher were fertility gods. They lived in the desert, and they prayed to God. They worshipped the God that would send them rain and
Mm-hmm.
fertilize. And so Baal and Asherah, they they built temples to them, and they believed as human beings had sex here on earth, then the gods had sex in heaven and
Mm-hmm.
fertilized with the rain, the ground,
There you go.
right? And so their 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 temples were full of prostitutes, and so you
Yeah.
would go to both female and male cult prostitutes. So you hear the term male cult prostitute. So people would go to and literally worshipped through having sex, and that is going to
Yeah.
be a temptation for people
Mm-hmm.
because the sex drive is one of the strongest, drives of our
Of
human
course.
nature.
Yeah.
You spread that out, and then and those fertility gods are throughout the Greco-Roman world, and again that ties into Aphrodite was a fertility god. That's why Corinth had temple prostitutes, 1,000 temple
Yeah.
prostitutes in the city of Corinth and things like that. And so there's parts of it that sex was connected to worship in a way that's even not yet quite connected to worship here in our world, even though it seems like people worship sex. There they use sex as worship.
Yeah.
But then the other part of it then also gets into the fact that they didn't value human life. And so in the Greco-Roman world,
Mm.
they're particularly males were inherently superior to females. And in that pecking order, only free men with property and things like that. And so it was a hot mess. And somewhere in there, you have a combination of things, is that free men were able to have sex with whomever they wanted, almost completely. But also the ideal, because women were looked as a lower sort of thing. Um,
Right.
they were
Sure.
only necessary
Oh,
for
yeah. Okay.
reproduction. And so
That's
you can get into this again. Sparta, Greece, some parts of Greece,
yeah.
men were relationships between men, um, including physical, was held as the highest ideal because it formed. Because again, men are superior creatures to women. Is it? So you get homosexuality that comes in sort of through that lens
Yeah.
as well. And they built their entire society. What Sparta? They built their entire society around a man having a younger teenage boy. And you know,
Mm.
um, yeah, it's just really hard stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but they had no autonomy. No one had autonomy over their body except for this elite class of men. And so, again, the revolutionary thing that Christianity does, and not just Christianity, Judeo Christianity, because
Right.
it comes in through Judaism, is
Right.
when Paul throws down that men do not have rights over their own body, but the wife has a right over,
Mm.
like that
Wow.
is that's the most revolutionary statement maybe in the New
Mm.
Testament for that culture,
Yeah.
for the Greco-Roman culture, because legally a Roman wife had no authority over her own body, and she had no authority over her husband's body. She could not legally stop her husband from going out and having sex with whoever wanted. And so the mindset, again, I'm not going to tell you every marriage was like this, but there was a common saying in the Roman world, that wives were simply for procreation and propagating the family name and all that other kind of stuff. And then mistresses, prostitutes,
Sure.
other men. That's where pleasure in sex